Haiti is in a state of crisis.
Haiti is on a brink of becoming a failed state,
where the government has declared a state of emergency as violence escalates.
A gangland rebellion is ripping through the republic. The prime minister has announced he will step down.
The UN estimates gangs now control 80% of the Haitian capital.
Armed gangs demanding the prime minister's resignation have attacked 2 prisons, allowing thousands of inmates to escape, leaving dozens dead and wounded.
A recent escalation of violence between the gangs and the Haitian government has forced the prime minister to resign. This was after Prime Minister Ariel Henry traveled to Kenya to sign a deal for Kenyan policing assistance. On the 29th of February, gangs started to attack government forces, mainly focusing on Haiti's biggest airport. This was to prevent Henry from returning. On the 2nd and 3rd of March, the situation escalated even further. The gangs attacked the 2 largest prisons in the country, in Croix-des-Bouquets and Port-au-Prince. They heavily outnumbered the police force, and there is an estimated 4,000 inmates that escaped from jail. Many of them have ties to the gangs, so this only strengthened the criminal network. Currently, government forces have lost their grip on the situation, and civil order has collapsed. The estimated 200 gangs, of which 95 are in the capital city of Port-au-Prince alone, run the nation right now. The gang leader, Jimmy Cherizier, with the nickname Jimmy Barbecue, may now be the most influential man in the country. He runs the most powerful criminal organization in Haiti, called the G9 Family and Allies. This is a coalition of multiple gangs which started with 9 gangs but has expanded to 12. On this map, you can see the situation in Port-au-Prince as of 2022. It has significantly changed since then, as the gangs now control about 80% of the city. And it's not only the capital where this is happening. Gang activity has spread all over the country. Because of their sheer power, gangs are now the de facto leaders of Haiti. Now, the G9 claims it is a political organization that fights against the corrupt government. That's why Jimmy Barbecue officially calls his organization the Revolutionary Forces of the G9 Family and Allies. He claims that his goal is to bring down Ariel Henry, who has been the prime minister and acting president since the assassination of the last president in 2021. New elections were supposed to be held last year, but Henry delayed them due to the security situation. This led to widespread protests, with people calling on him to step down, including Jimmy Barbecue. But, as you would have guessed, the G9 isn't only playing the game of politics. The gangs are also heavily involved in crime, which could flourish due to the lack of government. One of their illegal businesses is drug trade, as Haiti serves as the intermediate location between Colombia and Puerto Rico. But the gangs also commit crimes against the local population, making the country one of the most unsafe places on Earth. Criminals have ruined society by doing things that, well, we can't really cover on YouTube. In a country as poor as Haiti, though, these gangs have attracted a lot of members. As the poorest country in the Western Hemisphere, it's very hard to get by, especially for people in the worst areas of the country. While the richest 20% of people in Haiti have 64% of the wealth, the poorest 20% have under 1%. The latter live in shantytowns, sometimes crowded with hundreds of thousands of people. Especially in these vulnerable areas, the gangs have taken over. But the extreme gang violence that followed is making the economic and social failure of Haiti even worse. So the country is in a perpetual downward spiral. As you'll see, it's very hard to break this.
The Caribbean island nation of Haiti has been rocked by its biggest earthquake in more than 200 years. The 7.0 quake hit just south of the capital, Port-au-Prince.
The last elected president of Haiti, Jovenel Moïse, was assassinated on the 7th of July, 2021.
For days, many people have been forced to stay at home here in Port-au-Prince as thousands of protesters demanded the resignation of President Jovenel Moïse.
We'll go over the history of Haiti later, but first we need to understand what happened in recent times. You see, the people living in Haiti now have never really experienced a period of stability. After a time of dictatorships ended in 1986, the country had a fragile democracy that never fully functioned. In the first years, there was a military government that didn't plan on giving away its power. It canceled an election in 1987 because of violence during the voting process. Critics say that the military didn't intervene on purpose to remain in power. The winner of the next election, which was boycotted and had a voter turnout of just 4%, was ousted by the military within 3 months. While it was in power, the military took part in drug trafficking and governed the country hard-handedly. Things were about to get better in 1990, it seemed. The military leaders appeared to have changed their mind about democracy, and the country held its first fair election ever. The winner of the election was a fairly radical populist named Aristide, who was previously a Catholic priest. But the country's elite didn't like the result, and Aristide was ousted by a military coup 8 months later. Aristide managed to escape, but the military leaders killed 3,000 to 5,000 Haitians during their rule. Because of human rights concerns, the UN declared that its members could use force to restore democracy in Haiti. The US opted for a military intervention, and it led Operation Uphold Democracy, which was successful. The generals stepped down, and Aristide once again became Haiti's leader in 1994, after 3 years of exile. But the following year saw growing political tension. When his term ended in 1996, there was a growing rivalry between the new president, René Préval, and Aristide. Aristide won again in 2000, but the opposition refused to accept the results due to a dispute about electoral calculations. The United States and many European countries also said the election was rigged. This led to a wave of protests and finally a rebellion and a coup in 2004. In a controversial move, Aristide was flown out of Haiti by the US military. The US said that he had resigned, but he himself claimed he was kidnapped in a US-supported coup d'etat. There were even allegations that the US and France effectively orchestrated the rebellion. Following the overthrow of Aristide, a UN peacekeeper force led by Brazil came to Haiti to stabilize the situation. At the time, there was a lot of violence between armed political factions and the police. Amid the chaos, Aristide's enemy, René Préval, won yet another election in 2006. Although the political violence and protests continued, the situation seemed to be slowly improving. That is, until 2010. On January 12th, a disastrous magnitude 7 earthquake hit Haiti. The epicenter was right next to the capital city of Port-au-Prince, and an estimated 3 million people were affected, with a death toll of around 160,000. Haiti has some bad luck, as it's located on the fault line between 2 major tectonic plates, the North American plate and the Caribbean plate. As a poor country, Haiti's infrastructure was also unable to weather the earthquakes that were bound to happen. The billions of dollars in damages that followed set the country back decades. After the 2010 disaster, the new presidents were tasked with repairing the country. But the political system in Haiti came increasingly crumbling down. The next 2 elections saw voter turnouts of just 22% and 17%, and there was widespread rigging. The final blow to the trust in Haiti's government was the massive corruption that took place during this period. Right now, Haiti ranks among the top 10 most corrupt countries on the Corruption Perceptions Index. It became known to the public that between 2008 and 2016, Haiti's leaders have embezzled $2 billion worth of loans from Venezuela. For a comparison, that's about 10% of Haiti's entire GDP. The money was part of the Petrocaribe program, which was supposed to develop economies in the Caribbean region. Venezuela would provide oil at a discount of more than 50% and receive the rest of the money over 25 years. This money that Venezuela lent was supposed to go towards development projects, and the interest rate on it was just 1%. But in Haiti, it was widely misused. The government built all kinds of projects that weren't even economically viable in the first place. This was to create contracts to funnel money into shell companies. The $2 billion wound up in the hands of a few individuals, including top-ranking government officials. This led to widespread protests in 2018. The president at the time, Jovenel Moïse, was also accused, as he was already involved in the government before he took office. The popular protests were worsened by a cost of living crisis. Because of economic problems in Venezuela, it stopped sending 60,000 barrels of oil a day to Haiti under the Petrocaribe program. This caused regular blackouts, and inflation reached 17%. More and more people in Haiti were taking to the streets, demanding the president to step down. The police responded with force, often resulting in civilian deaths. This went on for years, putting pressure on the president both in public and in government. The opposition refused to work together with the president, which caused the government to come to a standstill. From 2017 to 2021, the Haitian parliament didn't pass any bills, and funding for public services effectively stopped. When the legislative elections were scrapped in 2019, the president, Jovenel Moïse, started to rule by decree, and he dissolved the parliament. A growing group of people saw this as a power grab, which led to a huge escalation in 2021. This was over a dispute over the term limits of the president. He himself claimed he could serve one extra year due to delays in the inauguration. Even though he remained in power, he couldn't finish the extra year, though. He was assassinated just months later. Around 20 Colombian mercenaries shot him in his private residence. Of course, this seems like some retaliation from a drug cartel, but it looks like the killing was actually politically motivated. Recently, a Haitian judge accused 50 people of being involved in the plot, including the president's former wife and the ex-prime minister. For an already weak government, this was the last straw. It lost the public's support a long time ago, and with the assassination, it lost all of its credibility. As it turned out, this political crisis was one of the root causes of the current gang warfare. Criminal organizations grew because of the vacuum that the government left behind. But actually, the problems with gangs run much deeper than they seem to at first. It's not that the government in Haiti couldn't suppress the gangs, it actively supports them. There's a long history of politicians backing non-state armed groups, which have effectively turned into gangs. So to understand this, we have to go all the way back to the 1950s. Haiti's dictator at the time created a personal militia to strengthen his rule. He called them the Tonton Macoute, named after the mythological boogeyman in Haiti. Even after the dictator was gone, the militia was never disarmed. It played a big role in the military governments of the 1980s and 1990s. For example, a paramilitary with ties to the Tonton Macoute helped in the 1993 military coup. In turn, a lot of political figures began to create their own militias to defend their interests. President Aristide backed youth gangs named the Chimaras to fight his opponents. During an attempted coup in 2001, Aristide called on gangsters to defend his national palace. The problem was that these gangs became increasingly more powerful. They found a lot of supporters in the poorer parts of society and started to rule over certain neighborhoods. Gang leaders abused this power and got involved in criminal activities. Still, the government refused to crack down on these criminal organizations. The G9 and Allies gang we talked about earlier was actually a friend of the government before the 2021 assassination. It was founded in 2020, right in the middle of the political crisis and the nationwide protests. According to a Harvard report, G9 received weapons, money, uniforms, and vehicles from the sitting president, Jovenel Moïse. They used this in various attacks in Port-au-Prince neighborhoods to conquer territory from other gangs. One of the most infamous battles, the Cité Soleil battle, killed at least 145 people. The Haitian government didn't bother to try and arrest Jimmy Barbecue, which is very telling. But why would a president support such a thing in his own country? It seems like the president would rather hand over his citizens to criminals than lose power. In his defense, though, he wasn't the only one doing this. His political opposition was also working together with gangs, most notably the G-PEP alliance, rivaling the G9. Opposition-backed gangs controlled various neighborhoods, which the president saw as a threat. At a time where anti-government protests were getting increasingly violent, the president didn't want any opposition strongholds. That's why he used the G9 to fight the G-PEP gangs. In short, the gang violence we see today is some kind of political proxy war. And after the assassination, it only got worse. Before talking about the retaliation attack, I quickly want to talk about YouTube. Now, I've had a lot of problems with YouTube on my videos, but that doesn't mean I'm not thankful for the platform it's provided me. I would not have been able to reach you guys if it wasn't for YouTube. We are almost nearing 1 million subscribers. And this is also my full-time job. In fact, it's a lot of people's full-time job. YouTube actually pays out about $60 million to creators every single day. With that kind of money and countless other opportunities on YouTube, it's no wonder a lot of people want to start a channel. And many of you guys probably have thought about it too. But not everybody's comfortable with putting their face out there. Just take this channel, for example. That's why I'm launching my first ever YouTube Basics cohort.
Here you can learn all the secrets I have figured out over the last few years uploading on this channel and a few others. You will also learn how you can find niches that have low competition on YouTube, so you can scale a channel to millions of views in no time. On top of that, you will have a community of like-minded YouTubers to learn from and interact with on a daily basis, and weekly Q&A calls with established YouTubers, so you can get the help you need. But since it's a community, we can only let in limited members each month, and that means there's a wait list. But if you are interested, you can get more information on the cohort just by clicking on the link in the description or scanning the QR code on the screen. You can also sign up for the waitlist there. Okay, let's get back to Haiti. Jimmy Barbecue was upset that his political ally was murdered, especially because of who replaced him. The Prime Minister, Henry, also acting as president, was probably involved in the assassination. In retaliation, the G9 gangs became increasingly more violent against the government. In 2021, they blocked a key oil terminal, causing a humanitarian disaster. But Prime Minister Henry couldn't really do much. With only 9,000 officers on duty in the entire country, the gangs outnumbered the police by a wide margin. A U.S. diplomat described the Prime Minister as a kind of clown because he wasn't in control of the country at all. The only ones able to fight the G9 were the rival G-PEP gangs and local defense groups. Fighting between the G9 and G-PEP escalated into full-on warfare in parts of Port-au-Prince. This led to tens, if not hundreds of thousands of people being displaced. Citizens were forced to take matters into their own hands if they wanted to keep their homes safe. Many of them created their own armed groups to fight the gangsters. Meanwhile, the state was slowly collapsing. There were no elected officials anymore, as all their term limits expired and the elections were delayed. As a result of the government's failure, the education, healthcare, and judicial systems broke down. On top of that, the country faced the worst malnutrition crisis in decades and widespread cholera outbreaks. Despite its terrible situation, though, Haiti soon lost the world's attention. It was only earlier this year that Haiti made headlines again because of another escalation in the gang war. The Prime Minister said he would only hold elections once the government is back in control, sparking protests from his opponents. Afterwards, he traveled to Kenya to sign a bill for a UN-backed operation. Kenya wanted to provide 1,000 more police officers to restore law and order in Haiti. This could open the door for many other countries to send police officers or even soldiers under the UN mission. The G9, they saw this as a huge threat, which is why it started to attack the airports and prisons. With Prime Minister Henry resigning on March 11th, it looks like the G9 scored a major victory. The path is clear for Jimmy Barbecue to take over the country. The only thing that may prevent him from doing so is the international community. A new transitional government with backing from the US could take back control. Various countries have already pledged troops to support this, and the United States approved $300 million of funding. This is because the Department of Defense anticipates a mass migration flow from Haiti to Florida if the gang violence continues. To prevent things from getting out of hand, Washington needs a stable government in Port-au-Prince. Even if this succeeds, though, it's going to take a lot of time for the country to heal. So one thing is certain, Haiti is in shambles. But some things, they don't add up here. Just across the border, things are going just fine. When we look on the map, Haiti shares the island of Hispaniola with the Dominican Republic. Both countries have similarly sized populations. Haiti has about 11.5 million and the Dominican Republic has about 11.4 million people. But apart from geography and demographics, there aren't many similarities between the two. The GDP of Haiti is about $20 billion, while its neighbor has a GDP of $114 billion. On a GDP per capita basis, the Dominican Republic is 6 times richer than Haiti. The Dominican Republic is actually an upper-middle income nation, being one of the most prosperous countries in Latin America. The Dominican Republic has managed to grow its economy over the last decades through successful industries like tourism and manufacturing. In fact, the Dominican Republic has the fastest-growing economy in Latin America since 2010, with a growth rate averaging 5.8%. With this impressive track record, the Dominican Republic is enjoying relative stability. But in Haiti, the difference can be bigger. While the Dominican Republic is rapidly growing its economy, Haiti has completely collapsed. It's not a far stretch to say that Haiti and the Dominican Republic are worlds apart. But the question is, why? Just a brief side note. If you like the video thus far, please consider supporting the channel. By liking the video down below, you help us out a lot with the algorithm. Without your support, these kinds of videos wouldn't be possible. So, sincerely, thank you. Let's zoom in on the Dominican Republic first. The country is on track to become a high-income nation by 2035. Historically, agriculture has been very important in the Dominican Republic. The country is perfect to produce things like sugarcane or cacao beans. Right now, though, the agricultural sector accounts for only 6% of the country's economy, with 8% of the population being employed in it. Nevertheless, it still provides a backbone to the Dominican economy. For example, the country's biggest company, Central Romana, is involved in agriculture. In recent times, however, the industrial sector has taken over in importance. It makes up 33.8% of the country's GDP, with 20% of the country's workforce having a job in it. There are more than 500 manufacturing companies in the country, mostly producing clothing, electronics, and footwear. In general, the country is very attractive for manufacturing things because it has access to the North American market. Because of the Dominican Republic Central America Free Trade Agreement, companies in the Dominican Republic can easily trade with the biggest market in the world, the United States. In fact, 40% of the commercial trade in the country is done with the US. Having economic ties with the US has its advantages, such as huge inflows of foreign direct investment. The Dominican Republic is one of the most popular investment destinations in Latin America, with the total stock of foreign direct investment at around $50 billion in 2021. Because of these investments, the Dominican Republic has been able to grow and innovate its economy. The tourism sector is a good example of this. Because of huge investments in things like beach resorts or public infrastructure, tourism is now one of the biggest sectors in the country, accounting for 12% of GDP and being the biggest source of foreign revenue. The country has everything it needs to attract visitors: white sand beaches, beautiful nature, and a rich history. In fact, the Dominican Republic is the most popular tourist destination in the Caribbean, beating some, tough competitors. All these promising sectors justify its GDP growth rate of about 5%. And the government policies also deserve some credit. It has provided relative stability, something that the government in Haiti wasn't able to do. Still, these economic figures don't tell us everything. Haiti could have had a similar success story if it weren't for the different history that it had. In a way, Haiti has been bound to fail even before the gang violence started. So let's dig a little deeper into the history of Hispaniola. Its modern history starts with the colonization by the Europeans. In fact, the name Hispaniola comes from the first colonizer, namely Spain. In 1492, Columbus arrived in northern Haiti during his first voyage. He and his company claimed the island for the Spanish king, and later the Spanish established a colony on the island. In this colony, the Spanish founded their first cities in the Americas. The most well-known example is Santo Domingo, the modern-day capital of the Dominican Republic. With their colony on the island, the Spanish started to exploit the resources and the people of Hispaniola. They mined gold on the island and produced valuable goods like sugarcane, all using forced labor. However, 95% of the native population died in the 16th century because of smallpox, a European disease that they had no immunity against. In order to solve the labor problem, the Spanish found a controversial solution. They started to export thousands of slaves from Africa to Hispaniola in order to work them as slaves. Now, the Spanish weren't the only Europeans that were active on the island. In the 17th century, French, Indian, and Dutch pirates were plaguing the island. French private adventurers began to settle on what was officially a Spanish colony. After a time of fighting, the French officially took control over the western part of the island in 1697. The new French colony that followed was called Saint-Domingue, which is now called Haiti. And believe it or not, the western part of the island was a lot more prosperous than the eastern part at first. That is, if you look at it from the colonizer's perspective. Saint-Domingue was called the Pearl of the Caribbean, and it was one of, if not the most prosperous colonies in the world. Saint-Domingue produced 40% of Europe's sugar and 60% of all tea consumed in Europe.
There were about 8,000 densely packed plantations in the colony to make as much money for the French as possible. But in order to do this, the French imported an estimated 800,000 slaves from Africa to this single colony. With their plantations, the French used the land so heavily that they damaged it and depleted its resources. It was so bad that the deforestation continues to this day. As you can see on this photo of the border with the Dominican Republic, Haiti on the left has way less vegetation. But luckily, the French exploitation of Haiti didn't last forever. During the French Revolution of 1791, the slaves revolted against the colonizers. Back in France, there was a revolution to achieve liberty, equality, and fraternity, and these ideas spread to the colonies. The slaves outnumbered the French by approximately 25 times, so the Haitian Revolution was a real threat to the ruling class. In the first months of violence, the former slaves massacred their masters. As a reaction to this, the French abandoned slavery, although this didn't really last for long. When Napoleon took power in France, he sent an army to Hispaniola to try to reimpose slavery and take full control over the island. He lost, and the independent country of Haiti was founded in 1804. The French, still angry at the Haitians for becoming independent, imposed a 150 million franc payment on Haiti in 1825. This would be the equivalent of about $33 billion in today's terms, a huge payment to make for a brand new nation. But the Haitians had no choice but to pay up, as the French wouldn't accept their independence otherwise. In the following years, the country turned to high-interest rate debts in order to not go bankrupt. In 1900, 80% of government spending consisted of debt repayment, and Haiti did not finish the payments until 1947. This is a major reason for why Haiti was far less successful than the Dominican Republic. For more than 100 years, the government of Haiti couldn't afford to invest in public infrastructure, healthcare, or even education. As a result of the debts to France, Haiti remained underdeveloped relative to its neighbor. But it's not the only huge debt payments that caused Haiti to become unsuccessful. Following its independence, Haiti also experienced a huge amount of political turmoil. Not long after the independence, President Jean-Pierre Boyer became the leader of Haiti. In 1821, President Boyer decided to take over the eastern part of Hispaniola just after it declared its own independence from Spain. Haiti ruled over what we now call the Dominican Republic for more than 20 years. The Haitian government imposed heavy taxes on the Dominican side in order to pay their debts to the French. It wasn't until 1844 that Dominican forces regained control over their country after Jean-Pierre Boyer lost his power. However, Haiti tried to attack the Dominican Republic once again in 1848 under a new leader. It failed, and there was even a counterattack from the Dominican side. These conflicts, along with many other border skirmishes and tragedies that followed, have caused animosity between Haiti and the Dominican Republic. To this day, the Dominican Republic doesn't like Haiti. The two countries have many cultural and ethnic differences, which are worsened by the historical tensions. The Dominican Republic now has a policy of expelling Haitian refugees out of its territory, sometimes even children who have lived there all their lives. The relations between Haiti and the Dominican Republic did get a little bit more stable in the sense that they were not at war anymore, but the political situation in Haiti absolutely didn't. The early 1900s in Haiti were marked by coups, assassinations, and power grabs, making the country politically unstable. In a weird turn of events, the situation was exploited by Germany. The Germans did this by getting excessive economic and political involvement in the country. This was making the United States very uncomfortable. The US didn't want any European involvement in the Americas, according to the Monroe Doctrine. The entire continent was Washington's backyard, so to speak. So, in 1915, the US took over Haiti. During the US occupation, armed Haitian resistance was brutally cracked down on. But to give the United States their credit, Haiti's situation was vastly improved during this time. The US created 1,700 kilometers of road, 189 bridges, tons of hospitals, schools, drinking water facilities, and much more. And as long as you don't oppose the United States, it was also relatively peaceful for the average Haitian. This stability disappeared once the US left in 1934. After yet another period of turmoil in Haiti, with multiple coups and power grabs, the country eventually slid into dictatorship. François Duvalier, also known as Papa Doc, was elected as president in 1957 and remained in power for the rest of his life. He was an interesting persona, creating a voodoo-inspired personality cult for himself. We already talked about his private militia known as the Tonton Macoute, or simply the Boogeyman. He used this private militia to kill his opponents and to remain firmly in power, because he didn't trust his own military to do this. Even though he committed various crimes against his own population, Papa Doc had support from the United States. Surprise, surprise. This was because of his strong anti-communist stance during the Cold War, which, Washington liked. After he died in 1971, his son, Jean-Claude Duvalier, succeeded him. He got the original nickname of Baby Doc. He was a bit less extreme than his father, but he continued to rule Haiti like a dictator. This only ended in 1986, after Baby Doc fled to France during the political and economic unrest. Following the end of the dictatorship, there was a time of turbulent and unstable democracy. We've already covered how Haiti slowly fell into lawlessness, poverty, and civil war. But the question remains, why didn't the Dominican Republic have all these problems? Well, first of all, the Dominican Republic didn't get exploited as much as its neighbor during colonial times. Spain imported far less slaves to the island, and they used it mostly as a transportation hub. In the 18th century, Spain had 15,000 slaves on the island, compared to France's 800,000. When it got independence, the Dominican Republic was in a way better position than Haiti because of how it was left behind. And what also helped is that the Dominican Republic didn't have to pay 150 million francs to the Europeans afterwards. But despite being better off than Haiti, the Dominican Republic did face some difficulties of its own. After it fought with the Haitians in 1844, the country was ruled by the military dictator named Pedro Santana. However, he gave up the country's independence just 17 years later when he asked for Spain to come back. This failed miserably, and the Dominican Republic continued to be independent. Afterwards, the Dominican Republic suffered from warlords, military revolts, and huge national debts. After the country was almost sold to the United States, relative peace came in the 1880s. But afterwards, this peace was again disrupted by a civil war, leading to a U.S. occupation of the island in 1916. This was also to prevent the Germans from getting influence there, just like in Haiti. Eventually, the United States left the country in 1924, and the Dominican Republic got itself a dictatorship afterwards. For 30 years, starting from 1932, Rafael Trujillo ruled over the Dominican Republic. Like any dictator, he had complete control over the power and the military. He also started a personality cult for himself, renaming the highest mountain in the country to Pico Trujillo. Now, you may think that Haiti and the Dominican Republic have an awful lot in common at this point, but there was one crucial difference between Rafael Trujillo and Haiti's dictator, Papa Doc. You see, Trujillo actually wanted his own country to prosper. This was out of self-interest, of course. He controlled almost the entire Dominican economy. Trujillo and his family owned more than 50% of the country's arable land. In the capital, 80% of commercial activity was done by Trujillo-owned businesses. And the dictator also earned a fair bit through taxes for his political party. Because he had a vested interest in the economy, he invested in it to make it grow and benefited from relative stability. This model was way better when compared to Haiti's dictatorship, but obviously it was far from seamless. By the end of Trujillo's rule, the Dominican Republic was deteriorating economically. He increased the political repression, but he couldn't remain in power. In 1961, Trujillo was assassinated after he upset the United States. The dictator tried to kill the Venezuelan president, who supplied the US with oil. The CIA then helped a group of Dominicans in order to get Trujillo out of the way. But even after the dictator was removed, the country didn't get any more stable. Actually, it was briefly more unstable than Haiti when the nation plunged into civil war. For 1 year, 3 groups were fighting each other in the Dominican Republic. The Loyalists, the Constitutionalists, and the United States all wanted different people to be the president. This caused a lot of unrest, with 6,000 Dominican and 327 U.S. casualties. Eventually, the U.S. forces left in 1966. The Civil War had ended after a new election, in which Balaguer was elected as president. He was an interesting leader, to say the least. He terrorized his population, but he also liberalized the economy and the government. This period after the Civil War was one of the most important when it comes to economic growth in the Dominican Republic. From the 1970s onwards, the country began to outperform its neighbor Haiti by a huge margin. You can see this very clearly on the GDP per capita chart. From 1970 to 1975, the GDP growth rate in the country averaged a tremendous 9.4%. This was called the Dominican Miracle. Under President Balaguer, the Dominican Republic attracted tons of foreign investment and managed to grow its major industries. Balaguer won 3 consecutive elections, and he stayed in power for 12 years. 2 other presidents followed him afterwards, and the economic growth slowed down. But Balaguer made a comeback, winning another 3 consecutive elections. Despite many allegations of election rigging, he was successful in achieving stability, and the economy did better than before. After Balaguer was forced to step down in 1996, the Dominican Republic finally got a well-functioning democracy. To this day, the country has continued its economic growth. Because of the relatively stable government, the Dominican Republic is now one of the most prosperous countries in Latin America. So, why is the Dominican Republic 6 times richer than Haiti? There are a ton of factors that have weighed in, such as geography, politics, and crime. But the most fundamental explanation is the different histories that the countries have had. The Dominican Republic was in a better situation than Haiti from the start, because of colonial history. Both countries have struggled with wars, occupation, dictators, and corrupt politicians, but there are also some key differences between the two. The Dominican Republic had way better economic policies, partly because of its dictators and politicians that wanted to achieve stability and growth. The country also developed a functioning democratic system over time, which has proved to have benefits. Haiti, on the other hand, has failed to recover from the dictatorships and colonialism. Its government became highly corrupt and unstable, achieving no economic success. By supporting gangs, Haiti's political figures allowed crime to flourish. Even though the two countries have so much in common, their histories took very different paths. That's truly the reason why the Dominican Republic is now 6 times richer than Haiti. Alright, if you watch the video all the way through, the YouTube algorithm thinks you will love this video. Let's see if they're right.